Juan,
Hi, Stuart.
how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. This is a great privilege to have you doing this video.
My pleasure. Well, Will, where you go? I always got work to do. So Will's got to go capture the glider that just landed. So the reason that I wanted to do this, I asked you to come out today, is Mary Gaffney just passed away in the last month. And I guess it was back in 1999, 18 years ago, that
How time flies, huh?
that you and I got our glider rating on the same day from Mary Gaffney. And really, it's quite a thing to have Mary's signature in your logbook. She was the women's aerobatic champion for world aerobatic champion for 2 years in I think in the 1970s,
1972, I think it was.
Okay, and she was flying a Pitts biplane, probably an S1 something, and that was designed by Curtis Pitts, who lived
Probably less than 5 miles south of here.
Exactly right. He had a little airport not too far from here. I heard stories about people in the 60s that used to just land on the roads, land their airplanes on the roads, or little pits. And so they were like little hot rods with wings in Homestead. I haven't seen this airplane in the last couple of years. I know that you've been doing some work on it. Why don't you tell me what is this Cub that you got here?
Stuart, this is a 1957 Piper Super Cub. The airplane, I've been flying this airplane since 1992. I used to rent it from a gentleman named Bill Burton in Miami Airport. In 1999, this airplane was sold to my late airplane partner named John Margolis and another partner. And then in 2000, I bought his partner out, and John and I became partners in this airplane. I was getting a little long in the tooth, but we enjoyed it. And in 2015, I sent the airplane to Texas to get a complete restoration. I feel as I'm a caretaker of history. And this is something that is now over 60 years old. And I'm just simply a caretaker. And I want to make sure I give it as much care and love as I possibly can.
It looks like it's essentially new.
I found a gentleman who specializes in Super Cub restorations. It was flown out there, and he disassembled it entirely, so everything firewall back was completely redone. It's very interesting to see, once the airplane is completely de-skinned, the surprises that were found. The fuel system, some of the metal in the fuselage, and how it was weathered and corroded, and all that stuff was taken care of. What was interesting, it was put in a jig. He has a jig for a Super Cub, and the back end of the airplane was actually 6 inches to the right and 4 inches higher. So it was completely misaligned.
Wow.
So he ended up re-rigging the whole thing so it would be a true fuselage fitting in the rig.
And I take it flies a little straighter now?
Well, it does. It really does fly straighter. I'm very surprised the little bit that has been needed after a 2.5-year restoration, because he put it back together and it all works.
Very good.
I'm very happy with that. And it's been now a month. I got it back at the beginning of November 2017. So I decided, even though this is a Super Cub, this is painted in the classic J3 color scheme, which is called the J3 yellow with a black lightning bolt. So a lot of people think this is a J3, and it really isn't. This is a Super Cub. Super Cubs came out of the factory in white with a red sheet line and like a double lightning bolt in the back, in the tail. But I like the yellow. I'm a color guy, so I love colors, and I want.
And it's easier to spot, I bet.
Oh, it is, and I like it. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the exact yellow, and it came out exactly how I wanted. One of the things that I did was a landing gear. This landing gear on this airplane typically is a bungee type landing gear, and it's very springy. And one of the things that this airplane does to a lot of poor pilots is that it's very unforgiving. The airplane starts bouncing if you don't land it right. But with this gear, it gives me an extra 2 inches of height, plus you have shock absorbers, so it's a much easier gear and a much more manageable gear.
So you got more prop clearance, and for if you're in rough terrain. And did you get a larger prop as a result?
No, everything firewall forward is original. It was overhauled, but it's still original. What it does do is that there's a problem with some of the original designs of the gear that you could have the bungees break and it could cause you to have a catastrophic landing.
Right.
So with this, you don't have that. So I think
Okay.
it's a safety issue as well.
Good, good, good. So,
Up here on the leading edge, all of the leading edge was replaced because it was getting old, it was dented. So I just decided to just replace the entire leading edge. Right in, here's the other interesting thing, is that it has LED nav lights and position lights and strobes right built in here, which is great. It's very bright and you leave them on. And it's easy because it's also a safety issue.
and it doesn't use that much electricity, so
very little.
you can leave them on.
Interestingly enough, this bow right here, it's actually made out of wood. And when it was uncovered, this wood was rot. It was rotted
Wow.
away. So the whole thing was done brand new. Coming to the back here, we have a metal aileron and the flap. Both of them were replaced because it was just getting old.
The trailing edge, you mean? And
The whole entire piece.
Okay,
The whole
the
entire
whole-
aileron.
so
was
ribs,
replaced. Everything.
everything,
The whole
okay.
piece. All of the wiring, everything, all of the cables.
Sure, sure.
Everything was redone.
yeah.
Also replaced the fuel tanks. There's two metal fuel tanks, 18 gallons a side, and both of them were replaced brand new. All the fuel lines are new. It was interesting how some of these lines were routed, and it was done wrong. This airplane has had a lot of owners and has had a lot of work done on it, and for the first time probably since it's left the factory, it's done right.
So you got someone who really knew what he was doing
Oh yeah,
to work on it.
Absolutely. He knew this. He knows the Super Cub extremely well.
So I don't remember. Is that the battery access door or luggage or what is that? I don't remember that.
This is the luggage access door, and believe it or not, the access door that was on here was wrong. So I had to do the entire frame and the door, and this airplane has this is the luggage door.
Okay.
This airplane is called a Piper PA-18A-150. What does that mean? P-18 is the model.
Okay.
And A stands for agricultural. And agricultural means that this airplane was originally delivered with the optional agricultural kit, which means that the pan here is metal, and this airplane was actually set up as an agricultural airplane but never used that way. So you have battery access right in through here, you have a metal pan, and there's a couple, I don't remember what else makes it different from the standard P-18.
Okay. So Grandpa could crop dust the back 40 with his Super Cub.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So let's look at the registration. Believe it or not, this is the original registration that Piper in Lock Haven gave this airplane in 1957.
Cool.
In 2010, this airplane was shown at Ocean Reef and Vintage Weekend, which is a very interesting event in Key Largo. There's a club called Ocean Reef. And I was showing off the airplane, and this gentleman comes up to me, about a 70-year-old gentleman, and he says, "Was this airplane in Atlanta?" I says, "Yeah, this airplane was in Atlanta until 1992. And he says, "Is that the original registration?" I said, "Yeah, it is." He says, "Well, I got my pilot's license in this airplane in 1960.
Wow.
Because this airplane was actually a flight school airplane in a small flight school in Atlanta in the early 60s. And he became a pilot at Delta Airlines, and at the time he had just retired a year before. So he was able to see this airplane 50 years later and recognize the registration. So
I mean,
great.
I think you probably know what you soloed in, the tail number of the airplane you soloed in?
Right, yeah, I think so. Something 28 whiskey was the registration.
5358 Delta. I don't
Okay.
think it's exists anymore, but that was the 152 that I flew.
Interesting. So yeah, it's kind of like
No, was it?
remembering.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. I hope I'll have to go check my log.
So coming back here, the other thing that we put new were these flying wires. You know, this is what keeps the empennage in the back and the tail and the feathers, rigid. And being in Florida, of course, anything metal, you better take care of it, otherwise you're going to have some corrosion. So those pieces were replaced. Back here we have the tail wheel, and there was a lot of work done to this tail wheel. The springs were wrong, the offset angle was wrong, so all of that stuff was taken apart and completely redone again. So it was interesting because I was used to a wrong tail wheel, and that's how I flew it. And now with this one, I got to get used to it again. It's a little bit more play to it. So it's just a question of getting used to it.
So that's a Scott tail wheel, and what's that thing on the top with the two tubes on either side?
right here,
Yeah, what is that?
that's a tail hook for to be able to tow gliders.
Tow gliders,
Yeah.
all right.
Absolutely.
You never know when you might want to tow a glider.
That's true, and I actually have towed a glider with this airplane, and we towed it out of the Miami Glider Club, and we flew it down to down to Ocean Reef.
Oh,
We actually did
I think
vintage
I may
weekend with the
remember
glider.
that, yes.
Yeah, John Margolis flew the glider, and I flew this. Actually, it was September. It was after September 11, 2001. It was December of 01, and we actually flew south from there over to Ocean Reef, and we flew right overhead Homestead Air Force Base.
Cool.
So I called up, and of course there was nobody on the frequency, and the guy goes, "What are you? I see a yellow plane and a yellow glider. Where are you going?" And I said, "Oh, we're just transitioning down to Ocean Reef." So I said, "Okay." And the guy you could tell, he got out his binoculars and said, "That's a pretty cool little yellow plane and a cool yellow glider. I've
Very
never
good.
seen that before." So we transitioned right overhead Homestead Air Force Base.
And I see you got a LED tail light there, the
Yeah,
white.
This is great. You know what? I think that's amazing what technology is doing with lighting. And I leave them on. I leave all the lights on because it's a safety factor, especially here in South Florida.
Definitely. It's a crowded airspace.
It sure is. It sure is. The business end of the airplane is right up here. It's a Lycoming 0320. It's 160 horsepower. It has a fixed pitch propeller. And one of the things that I did was the oil cooler was right up here, and it was really ugly. So we decided that just to replace the nose bowl and replace the location for the oil cooler. So it's actually in the back, and it actually flies cooler. I would think that it would be warmer, but the engine seems to run cooler with the oil cooler in the back. This is a phenomenal engine. About 8 gallons an hour. This thing just runs and runs and runs. It's a phenomenal engine.
And that's the air cleaner there. It's not a torpedo.
No, it's an air cleaner here. It's just you unscrew it and the whole thing comes off and you wash
Like a
it.
cartridge.
So it's a cartridge.
Is that a carbon prop or metal prop? Or?
No, it's a regular metal prop.
Okay. So that was that new with or firewall forward is overhauled? You said.
Yeah, we did not change the engine. The engine has 700 hours total time,
No-
so it
no-
was
no-
fine.
yeah.
We overhauled the prop. Other than that, everything else is as before. We did do a complete rewiring of all the electrical.
Okay.
So, and we took out the vacuum pumps because it does not have a vacuum system anymore.
Right. Who needs that nonsense?
That's true. It is nonsense. And I remember my last vacuum system, within 100 hours of a new vacuum pump, it failed.
So speaking of vacuum pumps and their effect on instruments, let's take a look inside and see why you don't need vacuum pump anymore.
All right, let's take a look.
Okay.
Let's take a look.
Let's see. Oh, I'm ducking under the strut here. Whoa, that's a clean looking panel.
So the panel, I spent a lot of time figuring it out, and what I wanted to do is I didn't want to go crazy, but I wanted to make sure that it was a modern and safe panel. I have here a Garmin 660 GPS. It has a transponder with the ADS-B in and out already set up.
Very good.
And a comm radio right here, and it has a Garmin G5 standby, both attitude indicator, airspeed, and altimeter right here. What's really interesting is this system right here, and we'll be able to see it in a minute. That takes care of all of the information that you would have on the gauges for the engine. It gives me cylinder head temperature, it gives me fuel flow, it gives me temperature, it gives me all kinds of information. So this thing is just phenomenal. It's right there in a regular instrument hole.
And who makes that? What is that?
It's called a CGR30P. I don't remember the name of the manufacturer, but this is something that's been out fairly recent, and it's just phenomenal using it.
Let me just show that a little better there, because that's giving you your gauges, and then you have the backup attitude indicator. Well, it's your main attitude indicator, and I guess you can get some kind of readout there, and there's the Garmin unit. Very nice. And ADS-B is a big safety thing, and
It is.
made a lot of sense to get it done
Now,
now.
what's interesting by having the ADS-B is that it's tied into the GPS, and I can see the traffic right in here.
Very
So
good.
it's great to be able to see traffic, and it's surprising how much traffic there is in this area.
I still want you to look out for gliders that don't have ADS-B.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know where the gliders are.
So look at the placards and the everything. They did such a nice job.
I wanted to do that and to make sure that there was placarded correctly and stenciled in, and not just simply with decals. So, and this airplane, believe it or not, didn't really have any placards before. So it's nice that we put all that stuff in. One of the nice things is that I did a complete different fuel system. This airplane had a left, off, right tanks, so you have to constantly every 20-30 minutes or so switch from left tank to right tank. Now I just simply leave it on both, and I have tanks. The tanks come down automatically together.
And you move the magnetos down low instead of having to reach up.
Yeah, before I used to have the electrical way up here. You don't really want to have electrical next to the fuel tank, so we moved anything electrical from the top, which is basically in this area and here, and we've moved everything down. So we have all the electrical right down here.
Very good, very good. So, all right, and new stick grips and nice clean up the interior, and it looks really like a brand new airplane.
Yeah, it is. I wanted to have an airplane that I could enjoy and not have to do anything to for the next 20 years, 30 years. So this is, I don't plan on getting rid of it. This is just my toy to have fun, to go fly, to introduce people to aviation. I think it's really important. I think both you and I agree on that I think we're stewards of aviation, and we want to introduce people to what it's like flying in a small airplane.
I say ambassador, an ambassador of aviation.
Well, that's even a better word.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like your word, ambassador.
That's kind of, I think, something I got from Bert. You know, you get people coming in and you have an opportunity to teach them it's not all about crashing and burning, that there's so much joy to be had in flying. We're
True.
very lucky that we can do that. So in terms of being a steward or a caretaker, and I feel, you remember I used to have an airplane?
Sure. Beautiful Cessna 180, 185, 180,
180, and it was a 1953, so only 4 years older than this. But it was a lot of work to try and keep it flying, and so you know what I'm doing now? Have I told you?
No.
I have an RV-12 LSA kit that is
You're
about
building.
halfway done, and that's kind of my way to get something that I won't have to mess with, hopefully, as much.
Very nice.
I'm looking forward to traveling the country with that in a trailer.
And when do you think it'll be done?
I think 6 months of hard work full time I could finish it, but I'm still working my regular job, so I can't quite do that yet.
Has it been more difficult than you expected it?
I have not done very much on it, but I bought it as partially completed kit from a guy in Ocala, and,
okay.
and it's the airframe is pretty far along. It's now down to the plumbing, the wiring, and that kind of thing. So it's the basic airframe is done.
And I get to meet people from all over the world, and they come out here and fly with me, and they say, I cannot believe that we're actually flying and not have to pay or talk to people or have to file all kinds of flight plans and stuff. And it's just a phenomenal experience to be able to live in this country, to be able to have the freedom to fly the way we fly right now.
It's really true, and I think other parts of the world are starting to get more into general aviation, and it's a wonderful thing. I know I have there's a lot of Indian students that are coming to train, Saudi students, Mideast students, and I think there's going to be people the idea of being up in the sky, seeing it firsthand, and feeling the controls and how they affect your flight position. It's just really joyful experience, and
I agree with you. You know, it's funny. A lot of people saying that aviation is slowly dying, but I don't agree. You go to an airport today. Yes, it's a lot more expensive, a lot more complicated to do. But you know what? Right here we have on this field this young man that is in love with aviation, and he's learning to fly gliders, he's learning to fly power planes, and he is going to be very successful at what he does because of his passion.
very good. So we're gonna set up to get going and actually do some flying. So